The Eclipse Protocol. Commander Ilara Voss stood on the observation deck of the orbital station Artemis, watching Earth's wounded fleet limp home. The planet below, once gleaming with the lights of megacities, now dimmed its glow to avoid detection by hegemony scouts. 17 months of war had taught humanity painful lessons about survival. Commander Voss, a young lieutenant, approached, his uniform pristine despite the station's power conservation measures. Admiral Chen requests your presence in Hangar Bay 17. Priority Alpha. Ilara nodded, her reflection in the viewport revealing a face marked by both determination and exhaustion. At 36, she'd already witnessed the fall of 3 colony worlds and commanded 2 vessels lost to the hegemony's superior firepower. The scar running from her right temple to jawline served as a permanent reminder of the Battle of Procyon, where she'd lost half her crew. "Tell the Admiral I'm on my way," she said, straightening her dark blue uniform with its silver commander's bars. The journey through Artemis revealed a station transformed by war. Civilian sections had been converted to military installations, refugee processing centers, and expanded medical facilities. Ilara passed wounded soldiers, some with prosthetic limbs still being calibrated, others with vacant stares that spoke of horrors witnessed on distant worlds. Hangar Bay 17 had been sealed from general access for months, listed only as Project Eclipse in station directories. The guards verified Ilara's identity with retinal and DNA scans before the massive doors parted to reveal a cavernous space dominated by a vessel unlike any she'd seen before. The ship was approximately 600 meters long, with a hull that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Its lines were sleek and predatory, lacking the usual arrays of external sensors and weapons emplacements that characterized human warships. It appeared almost featureless, like a shadow given physical form. Admiral Chen stood at the base of the boarding ramp, her silver-streaked hair pulled back in a tight bun. At 62, Chen had been pulled from retirement when the war began. She'd been Earth's most decorated fleet commander during the colonial expansion, and now commanded humanity's desperate defense. "Commander Voss," Chen greeted her, extending a hand. "Thank you for coming promptly." "Admiral." Ilara shook the offered hand. "I assume this is why my transfer orders were so cryptic." Chen's lips twitched in what might have been a smile. "Indeed. What you're looking at is the USS Umbra, humanity's most advanced warship, and quite possibly our last hope." Ilara studied the vessel. "I've never seen a configuration like this." "Because there isn't one," Chen replied, gesturing for Ilara to follow her up the boarding ramp. "The Umbra represents technology we've kept hidden for the past decade, developing in secret facilities beyond the outer colonies." As they entered the ship, Ilara noticed the lack of standard lighting. Instead, subtle blue illumination lined the corridors, casting everything in a twilight glow that somehow enhanced rather than hindered visibility. "The hegemony believes they've cataloged all human military capabilities," Chen continued as they moved deeper into the vessel. "Their current offensive is based on statistical models predicting our collapse within 6 months. What they don't know is that we've been hiding our true technological advancement since first contact." The command center they entered bore little resemblance to standard bridge configurations. Instead of traditional control stations, crew members interfaced with holographic displays that seemed to anticipate their gestures. At the center was a 3-dimensional tactical display, showing the solar system and beyond. "The Umbra is equipped with what we call phase shift technology," Chen explained. "It allows the ship to partially exist in a parallel dimensional space, making it virtually undetectable to conventional sensors. When fully activated, it can even pass through solid matter." Ilara's eyes widened. "That's theoretically impossible. So it was faster than light travel until we achieved it." Chen's expression hardened. "The hegemony has systematically destroyed our colonies, believing us to be technologically inferior. They've slaughtered millions, treating us as little more than animals to be culled." The Admiral manipulated the tactical display, zooming out to reveal the approaching hegemony armada. over 300 warships moving inexorably toward Earth. High Marshal Dravex commands from the dreadnought Inevitable Dominion. Chen pointed to a massive vessel at the center of the formation. He's personally overseen the destruction of 7 species considered threats to hegemony expansion. The 8th was to be humanity. Ilara studied the display. What's the Umbra's offensive capability? For the first time, Chen smiled genuinely. That's where things get interesting. In addition to conventional weapon systems, the Umbra carries gravitational inversion torpedoes. They create localized singularities that literally tear enemy vessels apart from the inside out. A tall man with dark skin and a close-cropped silver beard approached. We can demonstrate if you'd like, Commander. Commander Voss, this is Dr. Emerson Reed, the lead scientist behind Project Eclipse, Chen introduced. Dr. Reed, Ilara nodded. You're saying these weapons generate artificial black holes. Temporary and contained, but essentially yes, Reed confirmed. The phase shift drive gives us other advantages too. We can appear inside enemy formations, strike, and vanish before they register our presence. The Umbra can also deploy autonomous phase-capable drones that can penetrate enemy shields and hulls. Ilara looked between them. Why wasn't this technology deployed earlier? Before we lost the colonies. A shadow crossed Chen's face. Politics. Fear. The weapons systems aboard the Umbra could potentially devastate entire planets if misused. The Pan-Earth Security Council kept the project buried under layers of secrecy, hoping conventional forces would be sufficient. And now? Ilara asked. Now we have no choice, Chen stated flatly. The hegemony fleet will reach Earth in 72 hours. Our remaining conventional forces can delay them, perhaps even damage their vanguard, but cannot prevent the invasion. The Umbra is our last card to play. Reed manipulated the holographic display, showing Ilara ship schematics. We've built 3 other vessels with similar technology, but they're smaller and lack the Umbra's full capabilities. They're currently positioned throughout the system, waiting to support your offensive. My offensive? Ilara questioned. Chen's expression was solemn. Commander Voss, as of this moment, you are appointed captain of the USS Umbra. Your service record shows a tactical brilliance we desperately need, and your experience fighting the hegemony is unmatched among surviving officers. Ilara thought of the Procyon, her previous command, breaking apart around her as hegemony energy weapons tore through its hull. She remembered the faces of crew members who hadn't made it to escape pods, the colony she'd failed to protect. The Umbra requires a crew of only 53, Reed added. Most systems are automated or AI-assisted. I've already selected your senior officers, Chen said, handing Ilara a data tablet. All veterans with exemplary records. They're being briefed now and will report within 6 hours. Ilara scrolled through the names, recognizing several from previous engagements. What exactly is my mission, Admiral? Chen's eyes narrowed. Your primary objective is the destruction of the Inevitable Dominion and as many command vessels as possible. Decapitate the hegemony leadership, throw their fleet into disarray, and buy us time to evacuate as many civilians as possible if Earth falls. And if I succeed? Ilara asked. Then perhaps we change the course of this war, Chen replied. The hegemony believes itself invincible because it's never faced a technological equal. The Umbra is your weapon to shatter that belief. As Admiral Chen departed to coordinate Earth's conventional defenses, Ilara remained on the bridge, studying the tactical displays and ship schematics. Dr. Reed stayed to answer her questions about the vessel's capabilities and limitations. One question, Doctor, Ilara said after absorbing the technical details. Why name it Umbra? Reed smiled faintly. In ancient astronomy, the Umbra is the darkest part of a shadow during an eclipse. When something enters the Umbra, it disappears completely from view. His expression grew serious. But an eclipse is temporary. Eventually, light returns. We named it as a promise that humanity would emerge from this darkness. 6 hours later, Ilara stood before her assembled senior officers in the Umbra's briefing room. The faces looking back at her showed the same mix of determination and weariness she felt herself. "I won't pretend this mission isn't dangerous," she told them bluntly. "We're taking experimental technology against the most powerful military force in known space, but the Umbra gives us advantages they cannot anticipate." She activated the tactical display. "Our primary target is the inevitable Dominion and its escort vessels. We will execute what I'm calling the Eclipse Protocol. Appear from nowhere, strike with maximum force, and disappear before they can effectively respond." Her XO, Commander Takashi Ishida, leaned forward. "Rules of engagement, Captain." "There are no rules in this war anymore," Ilara replied grimly. "The hegemony has made that clear by targeting civilian populations. Our priority is military targets, but I won't hesitate to strike any vessel that threatens Earth." The briefing continued as Ilara outlined her strategy, incorporating input from her experienced officers. When they dispersed to their stations, she remained alone in the briefing room, studying the enemy formation once more. 12 hours later, the Umbra detached from Artemis Station, its phase shift drive humming with power as it slipped away from Earth, invisible to both human and hegemony sensors. Ilara stood on the bridge, watching her crew work with quiet efficiency. "Phase shift drive at optimal parameters," reported Lieutenant Commander Kwan from Engineering. "Gravitational torpedoes armed and ready. Phase drones prepped for deployment." "Tactical. Show me the hegemony fleet," Ilara ordered. The holographic display revealed the enemy armada, now just beyond Mars orbit. The formation was impressive. Ships arranged in concentric defensive layers around the central command vessels. "They're so confident they're not even trying to conceal their approach," observed Commander Ishida. "They have no reason to," Ilara replied. "Until now." She straightened in her command chair. "Set course to emergence point Alpha. Prepare for phase shift to combat configuration." The Umbra accelerated silently through space, its revolutionary drive bending physics in ways that would have seemed impossible just years before. As they approached the designated coordinates, Ilara felt the familiar tightness in her chest that preceded combat. "All hands, battle stations," she ordered. "Prepare for phase emergence in 30 seconds." The ship hummed around them as power redirected to weapons systems. On the tactical display, the hegemony fleet continued its advance, unaware of the predator about to strike from the shadows. Phase emergence in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The Umbra materialized in normal space directly beside the inevitable Dominion, so close that the massive dreadnought filled the viewports. For a precious few seconds, there was no reaction from the hegemony vessels. "Target locked," reported the weapons officer. "Gravitational torpedoes ready." Ilara's voice was cold as space itself. "Fire." 4 torpedoes streaked toward the hegemony flagship, passing through its shields as if they weren't there, a benefit of their partial phase state. They detonated against the hull, creating swirling distortions that began tearing the massive vessel apart from within. "Deploy phase drones. Target escort vessels," Ilara ordered as alarms began blaring across the enemy fleet. "Prepare second torpedoes spread for the auxiliary command ship." The bridge crew worked with precision as chaos erupted among the hegemony formation. Ships began firing wildly, unable to lock onto the Umbra as it shifted partially out of phase, becoming translucent before their sensors. "Drones engaged in striking targets," reported Tactical. 14 hegemony vessels reporting critical damage. On the main viewer, Ilara watched as the inevitable Dominion began breaking apart, massive sections of hull peeling away as the gravitational weapons created localized spacetime distortions throughout its structure. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission from the inevitable Dominion," communications reported with surprise. "Put it through," Ilara ordered. The screen flickered to show a command center in disarray. In the center stood a tall, reptilian figure with iridescent scales and ceremonial armor, High Marshal Dravex himself, his compound eyes widening at the sight of Ilara. "What is this?" the hegemony commander demanded, his translator converting his hissing speech to English. "What manner of trickery?" "This is Captain Ilara Voss of the United Earth ship Umbra," she interrupted. "There is no trickery, Marshal. Only consequences." Dravex's facial scales flattened in what she recognized as an expression of rage. "Impossible. Human technology cannot what? Stand against you. Defeat you." Ilara leaned forward. "You've spent 17 months slaughtering civilians, destroying colonies, believing yourselves invincible. That ends today." Behind Dravex, secondary explosions rocked his command center. Support beams crashed down as gravity fluctuated wildly throughout the vessel. "You cannot hope to defeat the entire hegemony with one ship," Dravex snarled. Ilara smiled coldly. "Who said we only have one?" As if on cue, 3 more human vessels phase shifted into existence at different points within the hegemony formation. Smaller than the Umbra, but equipped with the same technology, they immediately began launching attacks on key command and control ships. "The Umbra is not entering this war, Marshal," Ilara said, echoing the words Admiral Chen had used hours earlier. "It's ending it, and beginning yours." The transmission cut as the inevitable Dominion suffered a catastrophic structural failure, breaking into 3 massive sections that began drifting apart, secondary explosions rippling along their length. "Phase shift in 10 seconds, Ilara ordered as hegemony weapons fire finally began targeting their approximate position. "Set course for secondary targets." As the Umbra faded from normal space, the bridge crew watched the tactical display showing the hegemony fleet falling into disarray. Without central command, ship captains were reacting individually, some pressing the attack toward Earth, others falling back to defensive positions, and still others firing at suspected locations of the phantom human vessels. "First phase of Eclipse Protocol complete," Ilara announced. "Prepare for second emergence. Today, we show the hegemony what humanity is truly capable of." The Umbra vanished completely, leaving behind a hegemony fleet in chaos and the beginning of a new chapter in the war for human survival. Shadows of rebellion. High Marshal Zurek Dravex had survived the destruction of the inevitable Dominion by mere seconds, his personal escape pod jettisoning moments before the gravitational weapons completed their devastating work. Now, aboard the hastily designated flagship Indomitable Will, he surveyed the damage reports with cold fury. 27 capital ships destroyed, 53 severely damaged, the command structure in disarray, and all from an attack that had lasted less than 15 minutes. "Impossible," muttered Submarshal Thraxis, his senior tactical officer. Their technological capabilities were thoroughly analyzed. Nothing in our intelligence suggested. Clearly, Dravex cut him off. Our intelligence was flawed. He turned to face the gathered command staff, his tall, reptilian form towering over even the largest of his officers. The humans concealed their true capabilities. The question is, for how long, and what else are they hiding? On the bridge's main display, the remnants of the hegemony fleet were still attempting to re-establish formation. The sudden appearance and disappearance of the human vessels had created confusion that bordered on panic, an emotion the disciplined hegemony forces rarely experienced. "We have partial sensor readings from the human vessel designated Umbra," reported Science Director Kex, manipulating the holographic display. "Its energy signature fluctuates between standard space and something else. Our sensors cannot fully track it." "Phase technology," Dravex stated flatly. "Theoretical research the hegemony abandoned 3 centuries ago due to its unpredictability and danger to users." The command staff exchanged glances. Few knew of the classified research Dravex referenced. "The humans have weaponized it," Dravex continued. "And if they've mastered phase technology, we must reassess all previous assumptions about their capabilities." He turned to his communications officer. "Send word to the Sovereign Conclave. The campaign against Earth will require additional forces and a complete strategic revision." "High Marshal." Thraxis ventured cautiously, The Conclave expected this to be a simple suppression action. Requesting reinforcements may be seen as failure. Dravex's compound eyes fixed on Thraxis with predatory intensity. Would you prefer I report success while our fleet burns around us? The Conclave must understand this is no longer a primitive species to be subjugated, but a genuine threat to hegemony supremacy. Aboard the Umbra, Ilara Voss reviewed the tactical situation with her senior staff. The initial strike had exceeded even their most optimistic projections. The 4 phase-capable ships had inflicted devastating damage before disappearing into dimensional shift, leaving the hegemony forces in disarray. They're regrouping, Commander Ishida observed, pointing to movement patterns on the tactical display. Establishing the defensive perimeter around their new command ship. They've halted their advance toward Earth for now. How long before they resume the offensive? Ilara asked. Lieutenant Zhao, their intelligence officer, frowned. Based on previous hegemony tactics, they'll likely consolidate and request reinforcements before proceeding. That could buy us 48 to 72 hours. Dr. Reed entered the briefing room, looking both exhausted and exhilarated. Captain, we've analyzed the phase shift drive's performance during combat. Everything functioned at 94% efficiency, better than our simulations predicted. And the gravitational weapons? Ilara inquired. Precisely as designed, Reed confirmed, though we've identified some instability in the containment fields at maximum yield. I'd recommend limiting continuous fire to bursts of no more than 3 torpedoes. Ilara nodded, then addressed the room. We've won a significant victory, but this war is far from over. The hegemony still outnumbers us, and once they adapt to our technology, they'll develop countermeasures. So what's our next move? Asked Commander Kwan. Ilara manipulated the tactical display, zooming out to show the entire solar system. Admiral Chen has informed me that our sister ships are reporting similar successes against hegemony forces throughout the system. For the first time since this war began, we have the initiative. She highlighted a point just beyond Neptune's orbit. Long-range sensors have detected a hegemony supply convoy approaching from their forward base in the Kuiper Belt. 12 cargo vessels carrying weapons, supplies, and reinforcements, escorted by 8 warships. Ishida studied the formation. Those supply ships would be vulnerable to our phase drones. We could cripple their logistics with minimal risk. Exactly, Ilara agreed. But I want to do more than just destroy their supplies. Those cargo vessels contain data cores with transmission logs, fleet deployments, and possibly intelligence on hegemony homeworld defenses. You want to capture one, Joe surmised. I want to board one, Ilara corrected. A small team using personal phase shift devices could infiltrate the command vessel, secure its data core, and extract before the hegemony even realizes we're there. The officers exchanged glances, considering the audacity of the plan. I'll lead the boarding team myself, Ilara continued. Commander Ishida will command the Umbra during the operation. Dr. Reed, how quickly can you adapt the phase technology for personal use? Reed considered. We've been developing combat suits with integrated phase shift capabilities. They're prototypes, but functional. I can have 5 ready within 8 hours. As the meeting concluded and officers dispersed to prepare for the mission, Commander Ishida remained behind. Permission to speak freely, Captain, he requested once they were alone. Always, Takashi. Is it wise for you to lead this boarding party? The Umbra needs its captain, especially now. Ilara's expression hardened slightly. The hegemony took everything from me at Procyon. My ship, half my crew, my brother and his family on the colony. She unconsciously touched the scar on her face. I need to look into their eyes as we turn the tide of this war. Ishida nodded slowly. I understand. Just come back, Captain. The crew needs you. 8 hours later, Ilara stood in the Umbra's launch bay with her boarding team. Lieutenant Zhao, 2 security specialists, and Dr. Reed, who insisted on accompanying them to monitor the phase suit technology. The suits themselves were marvels of engineering, sleek, dark material that seemed to absorb light, with integrated weapons and communication systems. As Ilara donned hers, she felt the neural interface linking with her thoughts, providing status updates directly to her mind. The suits will maintain phase shift for approximately 40 minutes before requiring recharge, Reed explained as they completed final checks. While phased, you can pass through solid matter and remain invisible to standard sensors, but you cannot interact with physical objects. And to retrieve the data core, Zhao asked. You'll need to shift back to normal space, Reed confirmed. The transition takes approximately 3 seconds, sufficient time for hegemony sensors to detect you if they're specifically scanning for phase distortions. Ilara checked her gravitational pistol, a scaled-down version of the Umbra's main weapons. Remember the mission parameters. We get in, secure the data core, plant charges on their engine systems, and get out. No heroics, no extended engagements. The team boarded a modified shuttle equipped with the same phase shift technology as the Umbra. As the bay doors opened to the void of space, Ilara felt the familiar flutter of pre-mission tension. Boarding team to bridge, she calmed. We're ready for launch. Acknowledged, Ishida's voice replied. We'll engage the hegemony escorts to draw attention away from your approach. Good hunting, Captain. The shuttle accelerated out of the bay, immediately activating its phase shift drive and vanishing from conventional sensors. Ahead, the Umbra itself shifted partially into phase, becoming a ghostly outline before disappearing completely. The journey to the hegemony convoy took just under an hour, during which Ilara reviewed the mission details once more. Their target was the lead cargo vessel, which intelligence suggested contained the convoy's central data core and communication hub. As they approached, they witnessed the Umbra's attack begin. The massive warship materialized among the hegemony escort vessels, its gravitational weapons tearing apart 2 frigates before the enemy could respond. The remaining escorts immediately engaged, firing energy weapons at the position where the Umbra had briefly appeared. That's our window, Ilara announced as alarms blared across the hegemony fleet. Take us in. The shuttle, still phase shifted, passed directly through the hull of the target cargo vessel. Inside, they found a cavernous hold filled with weapons, equipment, and supplies bound for the main hegemony fleet. Shift to normal on my mark, Ilara ordered as they reached a maintenance corridor away from the main cargo area. 3, 2, 1 mark. The phase shift deactivated, and the 5 humans solidified into normal space. Immediately, they split into predetermined groups, Ilara and Zhao heading for the bridge and data center, while Reed and the security specialists moved toward the engineering section to plant explosive charges. The hegemony crew, focused on the attack outside, were caught completely unaware as Ilara and Zhu moved through the corridors. Using neural implants that translated hegemony language in real time, they quickly located the central data core, a crystalline structure the size of a small refrigerator. This is it, Zhao confirmed, running a scanner over the device. Complete fleet deployments, communication logs, strategic plans. It's all here. Ilara stood guard while Zhou carefully disconnected the core from its housing. How long? 2 minutes, Zhao replied, working methodically. Their security systems are complex. A sudden alarm blared through the corridor, different from the battle alert. Intruder detection, Ilara realized. They've discovered us. Hurry. Zhao worked faster, bypassing final security measures as heavy footsteps approached from an adjoining corridor. Ilara raised her gravitational pistol just as 3 hegemony soldiers rounded the corner. She fired twice. The specialized weapon created localized gravitational distortions that literally tore the soldiers apart at the molecular level, leaving nothing but scattered particles floating in the corridor. Got it, Zhao announced, securing the data core in a specialized container. Ready for extraction. Boarding team, status report. Ilara calmed the others. Charges planted, came the reply from one of the security specialists. Dr. Reed is injured. Hegemony Patrol caught us shifting back to normal space. We're pinned down in Section 7G. Hold position, Ilara ordered. We're coming to you. Prepare to shift on my command. She and Joe activated their phase shift again, passing through walls and decks to reach their teammates. They found Reed clutching his arm, a hegemony energy weapon having grazed him before he could fully shift. "I've set the charges for 5 minutes," the security lead reported. "More than enough time to clear the blast radius." "Everyone shift now," Ilara commanded. Back to the shuttle. The team phased out of normal space, becoming ghostly figures that the increasingly frantic hegemony soldiers couldn't touch. They moved through bulkheads and decks, returning to where their shuttle waited in the cargo hold. Once aboard, they shifted back to normal space long enough to activate the shuttle's systems, before phasing again and passing through the cargo vessel's hull into open space. "Umbra, this is boarding team," Ilara conned. "Mission accomplished. We have the data core and are clear of the target. Charges will detonate in approximately 3 minutes." "Acknowledged, Captain," Ishida's relieved voice replied. "The Umbra will rendezvous at coordinates Echo 9. As their shuttle accelerated away, Ilara watched through the viewport as the hegemony cargo vessel suddenly erupted in a series of explosions, its structure collapsing inward as the gravitational charges created localized singularities throughout its engineering section. The chain reaction spread to nearby vessels, creating chaos in the convoy. Back aboard the Umbra, the data core proved even more valuable than anticipated. It contained not just tactical information but detailed schematics of the hegemony homeworld's defensive systems, and most crucially, evidence of growing internal dissent within the Empire. "Multiple subject species are on the verge of rebellion," Ja reported as they analyzed the data. "The hegemony has been diverting resources from at least 6 fronts to support this offensive against Earth." Ilara studied the intelligence with growing interest, and if those subject species knew the hegemony was suddenly vulnerable, it could trigger a cascading series of rebellions across their territory. Ishida finished the thought. Ilara nodded slowly, a plan forming. "Have communications prepare a tight beam transmission to Earth Command. I need to speak with Admiral Chen immediately." When Chen's face appeared on the secure channel, Ilara quickly outlined what they'd discovered and her proposed next steps. "You want to take the Umbra to the hegemony homeworld?" Chen asked incredulously. "That's over 70 light-years from Earth, deep in enemy territory." "The phase shift drive makes it possible," Ilara argued. "We can arrive undetected, broadcast the evidence of hegemony vulnerability to every subjugated world simultaneously, and trigger the rebellions their leadership fears." Chen considered the audacious plan. "And what prevents them from simply abandoning the Earth offensive and crushing these rebellions one by one?" "Because we'll strike directly at their central command," Ilara replied. "The data core contains security protocols for their primary defense grid. We can temporarily disable it, leaving their leadership vulnerable. With their homeworld threatened and multiple rebellions erupting, they'll have no choice but to withdraw forces from Earth to protect their core systems." After a long pause, Chen nodded grimly. "Make it happen, Captain. But understand, once you're that deep in hegemony space, we cannot extract you if things go wrong." "Understood, Admiral." Umbra out. 3 days later, the Umbra emerged from phase shift at the edge of the hegemony home system, a binary star arrangement with 17 planets, the third of which housed the central government and military command. "Phase shift functioning at optimal levels," reported engineering. "We are completely undetected." Ilara studied the elaborate defensive network surrounding the hegemony homeworld. Orbital platforms, defensive fleets, and sensor arrays created an interlocking system that would have been impenetrable to conventional attack. "Begin broadcasting the rebel transmission on all frequencies used by subjugated worlds," she ordered. "Simultaneously, initiate the defense grid override sequence." As the Umbra executed these commands, they watched the immediate results on long-range sensors. Throughout the hegemony sphere of influence, Previously subjugated species began rising up against their oppressors. Colonial outposts reported attacks from native populations. Supply lines were severed as transport crews mutinied. On the hegemony homeworld, confusion reigned as defense systems suddenly went offline, leaving the planet temporarily vulnerable. Panic spread through the population as reports of widespread rebellion reached them. "We're receiving a direct communication request," Zhao reported with surprise. "From the sovereign conclave itself." "Put it through," Ilara ordered, straightening in her command chair. The view screen activated to show a chamber of 9 hegemony elders, the ruling council that directed the Empire's expansion. Their normally impressive composure was visibly shaken. "This is Sovereign Archon Krell of the Hegemony Conclave," the central figure announced. "Identify yourself, human vessel." "Captain Ilara Voss of the United Earth ship Umbra," she replied calmly. "I believe you're experiencing some internal difficulties." Krell's compound eyes narrowed. "You cannot hope to defeat the entire hegemony with these terrorist tactics. You've merely provoked us into bringing our full might against Earth." Ilara smiled coldly. "Your full might is now occupied with 12 simultaneous rebellions across your territory. Your defense grid will remain offline for another 17 hours, and the Umbra is currently in weapons range of your central government district." She leaned forward. "But I'm not here to destroy your world, Archon. I'm here to offer terms." "Terms?" Krell almost hissed the word. "Immediate withdrawal from Earth space, recognition of human territorial sovereignty, reparations for destroyed colonies," Ilara's voice hardened, "and trials for those who ordered attacks on civilian targets." Another conclave member spoke up. "You cannot dictate terms to the hegemony. We have ruled the stars for millennia." "And perhaps that's the problem," Ilara responded. "You've forgotten that other species have the right to exist on their own terms. Humanity doesn't want your empire. We don't want to rule others as you do. We simply want to survive, to explore, to coexist." She gestured to the tactical display, showing the spreading rebellions. "Your subject species clearly feel the same. Perhaps it's time the hegemony reconsidered its place in the galaxy." Archon Krell conferred briefly with the other conclave members before turning back to the screen. "We will consider your terms. A ceasefire will be implemented immediately while negotiations proceed." "A wise decision," Ilara acknowledged. "We'll remain in your system to ensure compliance. Admiral Chen will contact you directly to arrange formal discussions." After the transmission ended, the bridge crew of the Umbra remained silent for a long moment before erupting into relieved cheers. Commander Ishida approached Ilara's chair. "You did it, Captain," he said quietly. "You turned the tide." Ilara shook her head. "We all did, and this is just the beginning. The hegemony won't change overnight. They've been conquerors too long, but they'll never see humans as easy prey again." She gazed at the image of the hegemony homeworld on the main screen. "Today we've shown them that humanity is not just another species to be conquered. We've proven that we belong among the stars." As the Umbra maintained its vigilant position in the hegemony home system, reports from Earth confirmed that enemy forces were indeed withdrawing. Admiral Chen's diplomatic team had already begun formal negotiations, with the first hegemony delegation arriving under heavy guard. "Captain," communications called, "we're receiving transmissions from representatives of the Tyranny and Vexillian rebellions. They're requesting formal alliances with Earth." Ilara considered this development. The galaxy was reshaping itself around them as former hegemony subjects sought new relationships outside their oppressors' control. "Inform them that Earth welcomes peaceful contact," she replied. "Forward their communications to Admiral Chen's diplomatic course." Dr. Reed approached, his arm now properly treated and bandaged. "Captain, I've been analyzing the hegemony scientific database we downloaded. Their phase technology research from centuries ago. They abandoned it for a reason." "What reason?" Ilara asked, suddenly concerned. "Dimensional instability," Reed explained. "Extended use of phase shift technology creates microscopic tears in spacetime. They're self-healing, but with enough tears in close proximity. There could be larger breaches, Ilara finished, understanding the implications. Reed nodded. The Umbra's drive is more refined than their early prototypes, but the principle remains the same. We need to use this technology judiciously moving forward. Ilara turned to gaze at the view screen again, where the hegemony homeworld hung against the backdrop of stars. A world that had directed the subjugation of countless species, now forced to reckon with the consequences of its imperial ambitions. Perhaps that's fitting, she mused. No power should be without limitations or costs. Not theirs, not ours. She straightened in her chair. Have engineering begin developing safety protocols for phase technology. When we return to Earth, I want a full report on sustainable usage parameters. And the other phase ships? Ishida asked. Same protocols, Ilara confirmed. We didn't fight this war just to become the next hegemony. Humanity has to be better than that. 2 weeks later, the Umbra returned to Earth orbit in triumph. The ship's revolutionary technology had transformed a desperate last stand into the beginning of a new era for humanity. As Ilara stood on Artemis Station's observation deck, the same spot where her journey had begun, she watched Earth below, its lights no longer dimmed in fear. Admiral Chen joined her, the older woman's face showing both exhaustion and satisfaction. The peace accords are proceeding better than expected. The hegemony's grip on its empire was already weakening. We just happened to strike at the perfect moment. And the former subject worlds? Ilara asked. 6 have already formed a mutual defense alliance and invited Earth to join, Chen replied. 3 others are requesting technological assistance and protection while they rebuild. It seems we've inadvertently become the foundation for a new interstellar community. Ilara touched the scar on her face, thinking of all that had been lost to reach this point. The hegemony believed conquest was the natural order of things, that stronger species inevitably dominated weaker ones. And instead, they discovered cooperation is the greater strength, Chen finished. Beyond the viewport, a small fleet was assembling. The first joint patrol of Earth vessels, alongside ships from former hegemony subjects. At their center was the Umbra, its dark hull absorbing the sunlight while smaller craft maneuvered around it. The Eclipse Protocol has been formally adopted by the Joint Defense Committee, Chen informed her. Limited deployment of phase technology for defensive operations only. Dr. Reed's safety recommendations have been implemented across the fleet. Ilara nodded her approval. And the Umbra? She's yours, Captain Voss, Chen said with a slight smile. Your new orders are to establish diplomatic and trade relations with our allies, show the flag in former hegemony territory, and ensure the peace holds. As Ilara prepared to return to her ship, she paused at the viewport one last time. The stars beyond seemed different now, not distant points of light to be admired, but destinations within reach. Humanity had proven itself not just a species capable of survival, but one worthy of taking its place in the greater galactic community.